This is a very, very dry burl I've had for quite a few years. Finally sliced it into a few pieces. This will be the first one that I'm actually turning from the whole entire blank. And it has a big hole on the other side full of burls that I'm trying to use as the middle of the bowl. It's really an odd live shape. I'm going to take very delicate cuts. There's a lot of air turning there and it's really out of balance. If you take a look, you can see on the side here, this whole gap through the middle has got these big, beautiful burl chunks on it. But I want to make sure that nothing comes flying off at me. So I'll keep this spinning. I'll stop it if I have anything to say, and hope you enjoy. Take a look at how our cuts are coming. Still a lot of bouncing from the air in there, but we're getting a nice, gonna get an idea that it should cut cleanly. We have a nice sharp tool. Using my 5/8 inch crown M42 bowl gouge right now. 5/8 inch bar, 1/2 inch flute. This is one is brought in by Hurricane, but it's still crown. You know, still the same manufacturer, just a different private labeler on that. My experience with Burl is it doesn't follow that supported, unsupported grain quite as much as you would with a normal bowl blank. So I have a tendency to take what I feel is going to be the safest cut before I come in with a finishing pass. So with this much air, you're obviously not always able to ride the bevel, but I'm doing my best to clean up a spot, get in there where I can ride the bevel, and you get a nice clean cut. So that anchor bevel cut's still just as important, but when you have heavy figure like this, it's moving in every direction, and you never know what's gonna happen once you get deep into a burl. There's knots, inclusions, all sorts of interesting stuff. So we'll we'll keep taking our time, get this thing round. See some of that burl texture right in there, the first of the little burls, and the whole top is just covered in them. And as we get up to this face, I think we're going to see some really beautiful wood. As you see here, it's going to be a very asymmetric blank here. So we're going to have a kind of a big dip on this side, a high dip on that side. There should be lots of interesting character and figure on that. So we started out with the diameter of 6.5. The lowest spot was 1 3/4 inches, and the high is 3 1/4. So it gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here. There you go, starting to see some of that come through. Beautiful there. Little bit of tear out. Have to dress that up with a shear scrape near the end. But we're gonna see an awful lot of pretty figure. Now we got a pretty high side coming here, so I'm gonna probably go for a round first now. Let's just see what we have to work with before we join our two ends. goal there is to take as light cuts. As soon as I lose bevel support, I move out, take light passes until we get closer and closer to the round. You can see we've kind of hit that wall here, and we do have a little bit of end, so we're gonna probably have to lose another, probably 1/8 to 1/4 inch of total diameter on this one, it looks like. Let's hit a little knot there. Okay, we're starting to come into this air gap here. I think you can kind of see where the shape is coming together now. We'll pull this down. I don't think we'll leave that, but we might use a little cove down at the bottom. I really like the way that looks. The little cove in the bottom is a beautiful thing. Tomislav does that. I've seen Richard Raffin add a little cove at the bottom. It really brings out that foot and gives you a nice shadow line. Some real interest in the piece. Okay, we're getting closer to round, so let's that tool rest in. Still learning how to talk while I turn, kind of try to think out loud instead of just have it all in my head like I'm used to doing. So hopefully hearing how I process this is useful to you. As we get rounder and rounder, we're getting, oh, look at that beautiful figure there. That's just going to be gorgeous. But as we get round, we're getting up to the top. We're starting to hit some of these big burls up here. And I'm trying to be very careful not to let one of those go flying. I've had a couple of those self-explode on me when I was going up, so I have to keep remembering to remove my face shield while I'm talking so you can actually hear me. The first video I did, I realized that talking with the face shield on was not going to work. So the other thing I probably want to bring up is just remember that wood turning is dangerous. I mean, there's a lot of sharp things moving over here. You're responsible for your own safety. The way I'm doing stuff is just to share with you my method and to entertain you. It is not a guarantee you won't get hurt, so be careful. When you've got spinning sharp points like this, just one careless second, and you're going to spend the afternoon in the ER getting your fingers stitched up. So be careful, be mindful. You know, it's a heavy, sharp object spinning, and you're poking another heavy, sharp object into it. So let's be mindful of that. most of the time, while my tool's working down here, my eye's on the horizon. I'm watching what's happening up here. This is where I'm gonna get the best view of where my shape's coming, where that air is. I've seen a lot of people different advice, but when you're first starting out wood turning, generally you got your head glued down here, you're watching your tool work rather than watching what the tool's doing. So instead of focusing all of your attention here, get your muscle memory, get comfortable with knowing that you got your anchor, you got your bevel riding, you're getting a good cut, and then watch the results of your cut on the horizon rather than down here at the tool rest. Take another pass here. You notice there's a little concave, but I'm also looking at where's the root of this last flat spot in our piece. And right now we have a pretty ugly shape with some beautiful wood. So once we get this round, we can start focusing on coming up with the pleasing shape here. I'm still going to use the thirds law, the kind of the golden ratios here. But when you have a high and a low, you're going to have to figure out where that average is visually for your balance. Where's that bottom third, top third going to be? So we make sure that we still have something that draws your eye in. Even though I think this figured wood, we could be making door stops out of it. People are going to stop to look. This is some very beautiful, beautiful wood. Very beautiful. See, looking at the horizon up here, we still have a little flare, and we're down to really close to having our flat spot gone. So I'm going to take it from the bottom here. This is still just roughing cuts. I'm going to go, before I get my final passes, I'll go and sharpen up again. But we're going to go ahead and take it from inside this line and try to get through the rest of this flat spot and a pass here. And then I think we'll be ready to shape it, put a tenon on it, flip it around. Right now I'm using a 4-prong spur on this end and my live center on this end, and just a lot of pressure to hold it in here. I didn't want to sacrifice too much depth with a wormwood screw, and you'll see when I flip it over what I'm dealing with and why it's just barely clearing the headstock on this end. So I'm going to also switch out tool rest to a shorter tool rest that allow me to get in there a little closer and more parallel, so I can use my rail beds and the tool rest. It's kind of a paralleling guide. I know there's a lot of talk about, everyone's got their favorite tool rest, and I tend to agree with Courtney here. I like the cast iron. I have a couple of the robust rests that are very, very high quality with the hardened steel on top. But I found that these seem to be more forgiving when I'm dealing with something unbalanced. I don't know if it's just the nature of cast iron. And if you got a good dressing on it, it slides just as easy as that high-speed steel. There we go. Nice and round now. So that gives us an idea. This is going to be our max top diameter. We have plenty of meat there to bring this down into something pleasant. So I think I'll start by flattening out that bottom. Give you an idea of what we really have to work with here. Switch back to my bigger tool rest. Get that placed in here. Gives us an opportunity to really know what we're dealing with. Make sure that I got a good flat there. All right. Feels nice and flat. Let's see what we have here. Okay. So let's go ahead and get a nice tenon on this. And that way we can establish our foot, our tenon, and then we'll bring these, we'll join these edges together to give us a more attractive form. shear cut there just to see what we've got. We've got burl here and here. A couple of little bug holes here. I think we can still take a couple of nice passes and come up to just about a third of this here for the rounding. I'm going to go ahead and give it a pause and sharpen up, and I'll be right back. Okay, we got a nice sharp edge on the gouge now. I have a slightly asymmetric gouge set up here. One longer wing than the other, very similar to what Tomislav does and Mr. Raffin, Richard Raffin. See the difference from a very sharp tool. I'm gonna have to come in and smooth this out with some shear scraping. And then we're gonna just finish blending this, this corner here. And I'll probably shear scrape that as well because I'm hitting a lot of air as we get closer to that. And don't want the tool bouncing around. Little shavings and a little bit of dust on the shear scrape is what you want for that nice smooth finish. You can already see the figure dancing there in the light without any sanding. We still have a little tool marks and some ridges up here where we hit that air, so we're gonna have to be really careful smoothing that out. But that shouldn't take much more effort. But I think we've got our basic shape. Let's see. All right. Crispy stuff. Tight cleanup down here. So we'll try to clean up this a little bit so we don't have quite as much sanding to do once we get down to the very bottom here. And I'm gonna get a nice dovetail on that using my sharp point bowl gouge here. Okay, I'm happy with that shape. I'm happy with our dividing line right here. Probably sand that out a little bit, but I think it's time to sand the outside. And then we'll get that thing flipped over and show you what we're dealing with. So I'm gonna set the speed at about 350. Turn on my dust collector and put my mask on. So that first sanding there is with 120. We still have some tool marks up here, so I'm going to go over those lightly by hand spinning here. Get that dust. On these grits, I really try to take my time to find where the big figure is going to be and make sure that if I don't have any little spots anywhere, they're going to catch me up later. So you can usually tell with your hand, but the best is to get in there, see if a line or something you're seeing as you rotate it through the light is in the wood. Is it a scratch, a tool mark, or actually part of the figure? And this figured wood, for me anyway, it's always a little more difficult to gauge what it is on sanding. A couple little light passes here and there where I see something. This right here is actually some beautiful flame. I don't want to sand that out. But I have a little rough spot where this burl, this knot, and this feather. So we had a branch growing out here, a burl down at the bottom. There's a little bit of punky rough there that I'm gonna have to probably either sand by hand or very delicately get on there with the 180 here. Just a light touch, doesn't need much. I just wanna get over there and make sure there's nothing deep in that grain. And I already lost a little bit of my abernet there, which is always a sad day. The stuff isn't cheap, but boy, it sure is best sandpaper from my experience. Okay, like what we got there, we're gonna move to 220 now. And again, I'll get the dust collector back on so that, sorry for the noise, but protect my lungs. Difference once you get to 220, and it does bring out anything you missed before, so you really got to pay attention, get that light on there, really look for what's figure and what's not. Make sure you don't have any tool marks left around the rim where all these burls are growing out. See a little something here I'd like to sand lightly. I try to go down with the grain, follow down the figure that I'm trying to accentuate and bring out any details. This right here, we can tell here, let me see if I can rotate that just a little bit. The figure here is going to be stunning. This is really the most beautiful part of the bowl is this tall side. And then we have the replication of that on the other tall side where these burls are. When I flip this over, you're going to see these just a knot, a whole mess of burls. It almost looks like a petrified sea anemone. Okay, I'm going to go and move to 320 now. So we went 120, 180, 220. Now we're going to 320. And we'll end this piece at 400 for now. What we got here? Yes, look at that. It's really bringing that out. Now we're down to that 320. Now, if there's anything left, tool marks or sanding lines that you don't like, this is where you go back a grit. You go back to 220, hit that area, and then come back with the 320 again. Don't try to sand out an imperfection with the higher grits. Unless you see that it's something very delicate or very light wood, and you can just come in with a little touch on the end. I see a little bit here that I could probably just smooth out down this feather. And that's really where two pieces of wood are joining, where we've got a little bit of softer punky wood. I don't want to hit that too hard with a spinning drill or to leave a permanent mark or a flat spot in your bowl. But when you have a big swirl, we got a swirl here, I'm just going to come over that gently and make sure that the two areas where the soft and the hardwood meet, still there's no transition to the hand. So visually you can see that transition, and your hand, especially a wood turner's hand, is going to go right to it. Oh, what's this over here? And we start rubbing on it, right? So we want to make sure that wherever we have that, like I have a knot here, I'm going to leave that. It's natural, it's pretty. It hasn't caused any tool marks around it, but just below that is a little bit of softer grain. So I'm going to gently sand around that with a 320. With the grain, real light, barely kissing it. Okay, now before we go any further, I'm going to turn on the air compressor here in the back while I talk for a minute. And then we'll be able to put a quick little water pop on here, raise the grain lightly, come back and resand it with that 320 before I move to the 400. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and buff it out with a little bit of grit and shine. I'm not going to put a final wax coat on this till I get to the buffing wheel, I think. We'll just do the grit and the mineral oil. All right, let's blow this off, make sure there's no debris on it. I've always found that taking a few steps back and spinning it slowly helps me catch anything I didn't catch sitting right over it. If I missed a mark or a tool mark, like up here something looks funny, but it's just the way the grain is matching up. So that's okay. All right. So let's spritz this with a little bit of water. All right. Kind of gives you an idea of what we're going to see too when we put some finish on there. To make sure I get it on all the grain, especially the tight looking grains. Gives you an idea of what we're going to see when we actually get that sanded to the next grit. Some really pretty interesting stuff in there. All right, let's let that dry. I'll be right back. Okay, I've given that a chance to dry. You can come back. We got a couple of spots that are mildly, you can still feel a little bit of dampness to it. For the most part, it's dry. Should be okay to get in there. The grain's been raised. And we'll hit it with 320 again, and then we'll move to the 400, then some grit. Take a look there. Dry. I don't see any sanding marks in it from hitting the light. that's going to be very pretty. Very pretty. Now let's slap some 400 on there. Give it a quick once over. Generally on these higher grits, just preference. I don't know if it does any good or not, but I always feel like I need to slow the lathe down just a little bit more. It seems to stop them from clogging. And I also blow out my sandpaper frequently. This Abernet is amazing. I mean, it lets it go through, but these types of foam pads don't have holes in them or any kind of suction to pull out what's trapped there. So stopping frequently to blow them out gives you a much nicer finish and lets your sandpaper last longer. Lower temperatures also, sandpaper lasts longer, the Velcro backing lasts longer, the foam pad lasts longer. So you may not get a better finish, but you'll definitely preserve your tools. So our last chance before we put some oil on there to see if we see anything that stands out. Any dull spots, any places where it looks like we've got a tool mark or a missed sanding line. I see something right here that I'm going to just touch with this. Just like that, that's gone. It's a little crack. Very tight crack, nothing you could even put CA in, but there's a little line here that almost makes you think of a tool mark. Okay. Feel pretty good about that. So let's go ahead and put our sanding gear away and get out our shine. So I know last time we talked about this shop-made grit. There's a lot of good ones out there that you can buy already. I used Pitas for years and I still love it. I just, after watching Woodworking McDaniel style, and he taught us how to make our own grit, I kind of perfected a formula that's comfortable for me. And there's a certain sense of, I don't know if the word's pride or just like, hey, I did this myself. Let's see, how much of this do I need to rely on third-party support and tools for? I still use Pitas especially on my vases. If I'm using bloodwood or Paduke, nice, very, very dense wood. I really like what I get out of that. And this here seems to work better on the softer of the hardwoods. So like a maple burl, elm works very well on elm. I haven't had a chance to try it on oak yet, but mostly what I'm getting up here in the Pacific Northwest is fir, pine, cedar, Siberian elm. We get a little bit of Russian olive, which is a beautiful wood to turn. Occasionally we'll get some river birch and some paper bark birch, which I cannot stand. Just crack factories. Even the blanks I make and seal with anchor seal or something, they'll always turn into probably about a third of the blanks make it to where you could turn them later. It's very pretty wood once you get it going, but I've had very poor luck processing blanks from the local birch and the paper bark birch up here. But on these burls, I really prefer, especially the local burls, I really prefer to use my own shop-made grit. So this is, it's roughly by weight, 80% mineral oil, about 15% beeswax, and then a couple of tablespoons to your own preference of pumice, F2. All of this you can buy on Amazon. I could probably put together a recipe link, or I'll just direct you over to Woodworking McDaniel style. I'll put a link in the description to his site. I know he's not one of the big names out there yet, but I'm telling you, every time he opens his mouth, he's got something good to say, and I learn something every time I watch one of his videos. He's got some just unique ways of doing stuff that I really, really value. Okay, I've pre-rubbed in my grit, so I know I've got everything covered. And this is always a little nerve-wracking when you've got all these sharp little burls to have to put this on and polish it by hand, but the only way to get that extra level of shine. So let's watch her shine up here. I'll be starting out at about 650, and I'll get it all the way up to over 1,000 RPM when we're putting the final on. So first we're gonna do is get this dry, and then we'll move to the other parts, the clean parts of the cloth, until no more wax or grit comes off on the chalk top. Okay, so we should have a nice little natural organic shine on that. There's nothing on there but our grit right now. I do have a little knot hole that has some grit left in it there, but that's just mineral oil pumice, and that's the natural shine. Feels as smooth as glass. We'll take it to the buffing wheel after we turn the other side, and we'll throw a white diamond on it and then hit it with some carnauba for the final shine. But in most of my pieces, I don't use any lacquer, shellacs, acrylic, and it's going to be boiled linseed oil and beeswax, mineral oil, beeswax, carnauba. That's pretty much everything that I use. I do have some Danish oil and a few things like that. Every now and then, try something different, but I have found that this organic method produces a beautiful shine. You're not going to get that super high gloss lacquered look that's popular with a lot of the gallery pieces or the Japanese style of wood turning. But I think you get a much more organic, where the wood does all the talking, not your finishing. And even that is a skill, to not have the finish overpower what you've put out there. So let's get this thing flipped around, and you'll get to see what we've been dealing with this whole time. Okay, I've got my 5-inch chucks on here. This is Hurricane HTC 125. It is 5-inch, and it's been a workhorse for me. I haven't seen them around for a while, and the jaw selection, if you're looking for extra special sets of jaws and stuff, they really don't have that many to choose from. So I've generally, if I have specialty jaws, I'm either using a one-way product or I'll be using a Nova product. Of course, like every turner out there, I'd love to get my hands on a Vicmark chuck, but that is not in the cards right now. So let's pull this back so you can get a better look here. So this is what we were dealing with the whole time. We have this big sections of burl. This is the natural coved in part. You can already see just in the net with the bark off, all this beautiful ripple. And my goal was to keep a live edge here. So we're going to keep this natural burl edge, probably about 3/8 of an inch thick, because there's a lot of, well, we'll see. There might be some ability to get it thinner. And then I was stuck down here with only about 1.25 inches of material at the bottom of this hollow. So taking this already created natural organic form, my goal is to hollow this out, polish it up, and create an attractive decorative bowl. It could be something that a gentleman would use to put his keys, or a lady put her keys in her pocket change and stuff like that. I guess now I'm sounding like an old guy. My pocket change, Ma. But we had the 4-prong drive center all the way down in here, and we were just clearing the lip of my bearing on the headstock here on my lathe. I've had a couple people ask about my lathe. This is a discontinued model. It was made by the Oliver Machinery, and it's an 18-inch swing on this side, 32-inch swing on this side. It weighs well over 550 pounds without the extensions. I think the total net weight for this was just under 700 pounds without any accessories after we were done. And that was my primary concern. When I picked out a new lathe, I looked at a lot of them, and there's a lot of great lathes, but in my price range, at the time, this was the heaviest lathe I could get with a 3-horsepower motor. And for the access to the timber I have, turning something 18 inches is pretty rare. I've turned a few things on the outside here. I turned a 26-inch platter once. A little nerve-wracking. Everything has to be done in a faceplate when you're outboard turning. You don't have the privilege of having tailstock support, and I'm a big fan. But yeah, it's an Oliver 2018, and they discontinued it. They have a new version out, but it's a little bit lighter, and it's still priced about the same spot you would be if you were looking to pick yourself up a Laguna Revo 2436. It's probably around that same price, which is a great lathe. Got quite a few friends turn on those, but it's nowhere near the price of getting a one-way or a Vicmark. The Vicmark is kind of my dream lathe, and probably most of that is because of my fanboying for Kurt DeHeer and Richard Raffin and Kerry Corney and a lot of these guys that are my favorite turners to watch and learn from. They all turn on Vics, so it's pretty rare for me to see somebody who's not on a Vicmark unless you're on a Robust. And I've turned on a Robust. Thought it was pretty cool, but I didn't know if it was double the price cool. Maybe as I get older, more mature, and have won the lottery, I might change my mind about that. But at this point, I'm very happy with the Oliver. I wish they still continued making this lathe. All right, let's get to the inside. I'm going to start out by trying to establish where my rim's going to be, and I'm going to use a very small bowl gouge, stout, with a very pointy tip. Again, this is that Benjamin Best cheap Amazon PSI type of bowl gouge that I've sharpened with my own little profile here. It's a very, very tight point, so it allows me to kind of score a line and still treat it like a bowl gouge. You'll also see me using this to make tenons, because I can go right in at the right angle to create a tenon. When I'm flat in there, it matches all of my number 2 jaws. So, all right, let's go to it. I'll probably spin this up slow and see what looks comfortable to me, because all that stuff out there is sharp, and I don't want anything flying off. That's why I kept the tailstock in here for now. If you have a chance to use the tailstock, might as well use the tailstock. Once it's in the way or you no longer need it, pull it away. So you see, I just came in gently, trying to establish that wall thickness. Right now, the only place that we're cutting is into this burl tip here. So, and I'm coming in at an angle towards the middle. I'm not going straight in yet until we kind of get established where we're at. So I've got quite a bit of depth I'm gonna have to overcome here. And we are gonna end up having to pull this out at some point so we can get the tool rest in at an angle this direction, I believe, to get a good cut. But we'll see how long we can keep our tailstock in. Okay, so you get an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So let's see let's get at it. Just sneaking up on it. You can see we're cutting into this burl now. We're down to here. We've established a wall thickness on this end. So now we just need to be able to follow that down. So I'm feeling, even after my safety talk, about keeping the tailstock in there. I might want to try to pull some of this out with the bowl gouge gently to get it out of the way so we have a little bit less mass there. And these pricklies, these things, these little burl tips are sharp. It's like sitting on a pin cushion maybe. So now that we got something established though, I think we can come in here with a little more meaty bowl gouge and just slowly peel away some of this bulk. And then we'll pull the tailstock back and get our tool rest in at a good angle to start hollowing that. But if you notice, we're gonna be turning 50% air, well, maybe not 50. Let's call it 40% air, 60% wood for most of this turning until we get down past these lips. What I'm doing now is giving myself a little more clearance to get my banjo tighter in there, so that when we get to it, I'm not clipping any piece of the blank here. All right. So to see where we're going to be, our tool rest in there. See, we still have clearance, But we're gonna have to come into there very gently so it doesn't go flying. Let's see if we can get a slightly larger gouge in there now. We cleared out a little space. Oh, we can already see how pretty this wood's gonna be. But we want to get past that without having to hurt ourselves. So slightly, nope, you know what? It is actually time. It is time. It's time to pull the tailstock. I think we're out of the area where we have to risk any really big catches. From little protrusions and stuff. We can still ride the bevel into this. We just have to be very careful. So one of the things that I learned both the hard way and from people telling me repeatedly is always pull out these little tail stalks that have the sharp needle point on them. I actually think I heard Kurt here call it a vaccinator once. So that little sucker will leave quite the dent in your elbow if you're not careful. Let's take a look at where we can get our tailstock support, or our banjo in here without clipping any of the wood. Still being nice and close to the face we're trying to cut. We got a clip there, so we got to be careful. Just got to find the right spot. My preference is going to be able to come in at an angle like that if I'm not, but I'm going to clip it again. Let's see where we are where we don't clip it. Because that's the big deal. Nothing worse than turning on your lathe at turning speed and breaking the wing off of one of your bowls, huh? And that's why you want to keep that tailstock on. Let's see if we can pull that back together and remount it. Okay, well, I was able to retrieve the bowl from just under the lathe here. When we're spinning at the speeds we were at, it's going to drop straight down. So we did luck out there. No damage to the rim. You can see here though, maybe a little bit deeper tenon would have been in order. I did get a little chip out here, and I had a pretty tight circle, so this should have held up pretty well. But the area where we caught is what we were talking about earlier. So we come around and we hit a brand new spot that isn't already flattened out. So I need to come in much more gently, take much smaller, finer cuts, and I'm not ready to establish up here yet. So that was my bad, and hopefully we learned something from that, and we'll be able to get this back on running true. Or it's going to become a power carving Dremel tutorial instead. I'm going to start this out. Okay, we've got it remounted. There was no real damage, so let's see if we can just take some lighter cuts and avoid it flying off this time. Getting into that. We're almost down to where we shouldn't have to worry about anything else catching in terms of a swinging spot. And again, I could get out a hollowing system with a captive arm, but generally don't need to do that with this wide open a space. But let's keep going, see where we end up. Starting to see some shape take here. And see where we're still gonna have to come quite a bit down to capture what's in here. So I'm just gonna keep peeling away at this ridge here until we get something a little resembling something more smooth. And then we'll go after it like a regular bowl. See this burl, we're taking little chips. We're not really getting cuts. Fine little clip outs there, but we're getting closer to that bottom where we can start coming out like a regular bowl, following that up. But we still have a long ways to go before we're out of the catch zone there. So we'll just patiently keep at it. Make sure that we don't get into a spot where we're gonna clip one of our wings. Still have a teeny little dimple there, so we're gonna wanna work past that, but we're gonna wait till we get the rest of this. So we're almost to a nice cove here. And then we know we just gotta keep going out. It's just a matter of patience on this one. I'm starting to get a nice pull out on that. And we still have a solid inch of material here. So probably the smart thing to do is go ahead and go a little deeper in that middle. We'll keep pulling out. As long as we don't clip our wing here. Give us a little bit more room. All right. No difference. Starting to look like a bowl, or at least like half a bowl, or like a bowl that exploded in a volcano or something. It's definitely starting to look take shape here. So we still have quite a bit of material to pull out here, and we need to get out this direction to get this down to about 3/8. So again, just slow, steady, easy cuts, because we still have a lot of catch potential here. Now is trying to reestablish that outside wall thickness, figure out exactly how much space I have and where that I stop turning air. So figuring out where I stop turning air is real important to me right now, so I could take different kind of cuts than these little nibbling cuts that take a lot of time, probably not a lot of fun to watch, so I'll probably speed a lot of that up, but just want to make sure you understood what I'm trying to do here. So you see our wall thickness, we want to keep the beautiful Burl part of this, and we'll hit that with a Sandoflex probably. Although I might just leave it natural like that, that's awful pretty. Let's see, we still have, you know, about ½ an inch before we hit this wall here, and even a little bit more before we hit this one. But once we're turning in all three of those spaces, I can reverse the direction of the lathe and come in with a swooping cut this direction down to center. And I've left a little nub here, but we'll come down, sweep that out. I think we'll be okay. But I'm gonna keep nibbling away at these teeny little, I'm probably taking less than a 64th of an inch at a time, just because that's what the wood's letting me do. If I take too bigger cut, it wants to grab, no matter what angle I'm at or how sharp my tool is. I'm just, grains flipping 70 different directions here. But this is gonna be a beautiful piece. You can already see the figure in it, and there's no sanding or any really finished cuts at all. Almost down here to that third section. So I'm looking at this as these are our high spots here. We're almost down into this spot. And we do want to establish that diameter in both of these areas to make this look right. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. I think though that we're getting really close to where we could take some nice slow gouges, but I want to get down into that with our little step cut with the really pointy tool. Thickness there. So showing lots of the burl detail. See how close we are to hitting this. So this is going to probably be part of the swoop down into the bottom. So I don't think we want to cut too deep into that. All right. Let's see if we can get in there with a bowl gouge and finish that up. So that's another crown. This is a 1/2 inch bowl gouge with a 3/8 flute inside. See, we're getting closer to our final shape. So we still have a lot of material here we can take out to finish that round to the bottom, following this outside profile. So we're almost at the depth though down here, since we have such a shallow bowl, that we're going to be very gentle taking this out. We still have a step here that follows all the way around, so we're not out around to get any weird flex yet. So let's see if we can get in here with a scraper. Nice sharp scraper. Flatten out the bottom. Now I'm going to get that right on the center line and then lift up just a bit, so I know that I can have can keep that handle elevated while I'm getting the cut I'm looking for. Nice round bottom. All I have to do is get this lip out here. I think we can do that with a 1/2 inch shear scrape up to this edge. Still have a pretty chunky bottom down here though. So take a few more passes going down to give us more depth, more of a round look before we hit that side. Still have a very sharp edge on here. Okay, you see now we have a little bit more of a roundness to that there. So all we have to do now is clean out this corner. And in that space, we have one piece of air. So I have a round nose box scraper. This is a 3/4 inch. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a fresh edge on that before we attempt to round out that corner. Okay, so for scrapers, we talked about earlier, we want to tool rest up a little higher so we can keep that angle so we don't get a catch. I'm right there in the middle. Now my goal with this is going to be to come around gently over here, real small gentle cuts until I can blend that. But if you notice, I'm going to still be hitting some air. So I really have to keep my force down on the tool this direction, angle up, and be very gentle with my cuts. That's really more of a negative rake scraper effect there. I'm up at a high angle with a very shallow cut on that. So we're way, way, way outside of the 90-degree area. So we're getting that negative rake, which really almost makes a catch impossible unless you jam a tool in, from my experience. Now we still have a little bump down here, so we'll gently come down and take that little wave out. But as you can see, the finish left behind, just beautiful figure popping through there. And we do have some lines up here. I could get out a captive hollow shear scraper that allow me to put it in my Trent Bosch system and holds it out with a scraper, and I can really just kiss that edge without worrying about catching a tool or having it fly out of my hand if I sneeze, breathe deeply, or a stiff wind rolls through. When we have this kind of air to turn, scraping's almost an impossibility from my experience. I'm sure there's some turners out there who can pull it off. But I think we'll pretty much be content with that. We're just gonna round that off a teeny bit more. I just want that one lump right there. Even if we do get out the shear scraper, The captive shear scraper, that's not designed for big material removal. It's designed for smoothing surfaces and making sure that we got a good cut. So let's hit this up a little bit, and then we'll see what we're gonna do from there. High angle, I just slowly rolled that tool out to see if we could get rid of some of these tool marks. We did a pretty good job. The rest of that's very sandable. Still have a little bump right here. I'm gonna go ahead and mark it with a pencil so that I can get a better view on it here. Once that starts spinning with all this figured wood, now if I can find it again, I can't. So our hump is right here. And I wanna make sure that I get that out with a tool rather than having to come in here and try to sand that out later. Although this burl's very sandable, but you know, we want to get it right with the tool. So we're going to come in at a steep angle, and we're just going to try to roll that little lump out. You can barely feel it with the tool as you roll over, but you can see the tool head move just a bit right there. So that's the spot we want to just clean that up a little bit, and that's going to get us to a nice uniform wall thickness there as well. I think that's all we needed there. Yep. A couple tool marks that'll sand out pretty easily, especially up here on the wings, and we really don't want to risk coming up here and catching one of these very sharp edges and breaking our piece. We made it this far, even flying off the lathe once, and we still have kept our entire rim intact. So I think that that's a good spot to stop with the hollowing, and we'll get to the sanding. Okay, we are ready to sand. Before we get to it though, I'm going to be using 2-inch discs on this. And this is a little tip that I have for you here. I picked these up at Michael's. Could have been Joann's. I go there all the time with my wife looking at, you know, beads and crafting. And these were in the storage area. A couple of bucks. I think it was $12 for them all. I've got my sandpaper 2-inch disc from 80 grit all the way to 800. Stands up nice on my lathe. I can grab the one I need when I need it. They're always organized. I'm not digging around. And I'm not tempted to overuse a piece of sandpaper that we all know we shouldn't still be using. They're cutting tools. When they get dull, we should be throwing them away. Because this has got some tool marks in it that I'm not super proud of, but I couldn't get out with the scraper, and I didn't want to set up the captive system, I'm going to go ahead and start at 80 grit so we can get into these tool marks that are in the creases here where we're catching some air. And more accomplished turner, I'm sure, could ride that perfectly. I've watched a turner named Richard West. Does a lot of hollowing, and he hollows out the most amazing things. And I never see tool marks like this when he's stopping between tools. So I'm sure it's just a matter of practice for me and getting used to turning air a little better and understanding how to deal with the different figure on these crazy woods. But we're going to start at 80 grit, work up to 400. I will be running the lathe very slowly and then coming in, probably stopping occasionally to pull these out. But a little bit more detailed sanding in here. The angle we're going to come in at this still is on our bowl really well, so we have less than a 2-inch radius, and then the slope into the inside here. There's a little bit of a flat here, or a little nub that we'll probably want to try to get out. Also, I hit it with the scraper a few times, but might be something actually in the wood there. So let's get at it. I'm sure that sanding is not the reason you tuned into my channel, but I'm going to go ahead and go through the whole process, and I'll just speed it up. If I'm going to say anything, I'll slow it down for you. But I think that my editing software gets me up to 16x. So my 10 minutes, 20 minutes of sanding shouldn't take any more than 35, 40 seconds. Let's do it. So first thing we're going to do is spin it up to about 350 RPM. And then I'm going to kick up the dust collector. Here we go.
Prepare ship for ludicrous speed.
Okay, after some consideration, sanding it all the way to 400, I've decided to use Phil Anderson from Shady Acres Wood Shop's favorite, the Howard Wax and Feed. I've had really good luck with this interior on really dry wood. It'll suck some of it up, leaves a nice film afterwards for you to buff out. And I really can't use my normal, I don't want to use my hands in here with all these sharp prickly things while trying to buff it. So I'll have to machine buff it, and that means mostly by hand. So we'll put a little dab of the old Howards on there. Oop, that's probably more than a dab. Let's see what we get here. Get a little bit of the reveal. I've got some on the outside there, so that means we're going to be doing that here next. Oh yeah, that looks really pretty. The thing I like about Howards too, every time I use it I think of Phil, and Phil is just such a fun wood turner to watch. But aside from that, it smells so good. It smells like you just cut a fresh orange or something. And it immediately brings out shine and your tool marks if you have some. So you want to, it's really nice to use, but it takes forever to get it off if you've got it on and you need to sand it back off. And this will, I don't think it says it on the bottle, but if you look at the ingredients, it should be completely food safe, but can't see anybody drinking soup out of this one here. Get a little bit on the edges there. All I'm doing now is just trying to get a little shine on those tips. And then I'm gonna have to let this sit, probably let it cure overnight. You can usually come back in maybe an hour sometimes, but I like to get it nice and hard before I try to buff it. And we're gonna use a linen wheel on the drill to get these burl tips nice and shiny. The outside we'll do on the regular buffing system, the Burl over there. But until then, we got a pretty nice looking bowl. At least it's a very interesting looking bowl. That's a really nice figure. We got our burl in there with the little arms running out. Same arms are on the other side here. So I think when that cures up, get a nice buff on it, get a little of our shop-made shine juice on there, and then we'll flip it over and take that tenon off. Okay, we're on day 2 now. I've got my little mop on the buffer here. The Howards is settled in real nice. We still have this beautiful clearness here. I've noticed that the camera is blocking the light though, so let's see if we can get you into a spot where you can get a little better light on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin the lathe at about 350 RPM, and while it's spinning, we're going to go ahead and use the buffer here. After we buffed out the existing Howards, I'm going to put on some of my own in-house shine, and then we'll buff that in as well. And then we're going to flip it over, remove the tenon, and take it over to the buffing wheel. See, we picked up a little shine and worked out the film over there. Let's see if we can pick it up in the camera, but we got some beautiful chatoyancy down there. Just the way the light reflects off that wood. We got the ripple and the burl. More of that beautiful ripple in here. And our knots stayed nice and tight, so we're good. And the bark inclusions, nice and smooth. All right, let's put a little bit of our homemade shine on. Now, I think earlier in the video, I told you guys that I learned how to make this from woodworking McDaniel style. And really good guy, recommend you check him out. I've learned quite a few things from him and a very unique teaching style. He's just a good teacher, kind guy. And this one here is beeswax, mineral oil, and carnauba. And you just kind of mix it up on a pot on your stove. He's got a great video on that, so I will just link to the video rather than try to put up a new Amazon list or anything like that, because he's already done all that work. And I think you should always give credit to the people you are learning from, especially in our craft. We seem to have the most generous people, always giving away their tips and tricks, and just a lot of generosity to all the people we get to deal with. We're very lucky to be in a community of such good folks. So, a little of that shine in there. I'm only just wetting the cloth. There's really not a ton of it. Just want a little surface on there. And I'm gonna let that dry in a bit. And usually the only amount of time it takes is about the time I snap the lid back on my Tupperware, which is, I make about, what is this one here? It's a little over a quart of this. And this will last me 2, 3, 4 years sometimes before I remake it. I'll sometimes make it and fill up these little jars so that I can give to customers so they can reapply a little buff or shine to it if it gets dirty or dusty. And that's always appreciated, you know, a little extra something there. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and crank up our speed. I'm running just shy of 700 RPM. Wheels on forward, full speed. And that should be all we need for the final shine. Now, some folks would prefer a heavy shellac finish or something that gives it a little bit more of the furniture kind of polish, but I prefer this more organic, natural, polished wood with the wax. You know, to each their own. Everyone's got their own style, but boy, just that little extra carnauba on top with some beeswax really pops the chatoyancy out there. All right, let's flip this thing over and take that tenon off. So like many wood turners, I keep a large block of my offcuts and round parts from all the different projects I do. I've got a whole drawer full of them, and I use them as jam chucks, jam blocks, or just a little extra so I can take the tenons off. A lot of different shapes and profiles, and every now and then I end up turning one of them into something else to finish a project and end up losing what I had originally. This is just an old redwood fence post, and this hole in here is so I can put a tenon in. I do a jam chuck fit on this so I can actually stick my lids when I'm turning the bottom of a lid sometimes. So what I like to do is use a nice microfiber cloth. I'll try to keep a clean one over here. And all I'm going to do is take that up against my jam chuck, and I've kept my nice centering hole from before. So all we have to do is bring the tailstock up with the right live center, and we can get a nice firm hold on that to get most of the tenon off. And then afterwards, I'll have to power sand off the little nub. I haven't mastered the art of removing the nub and keeping my bowl in one piece while on the lathe. There's some timbers really allow for it, others just don't. So I'm still using my my fine point live center, the same one we started with, so I don't have to worry about any differences in layout. Put my little witness mark in there. Couple of cranks until I feel like it's comfortable. turn my speed all the way down, and slowly come up, make sure we're in round. And that looks pretty good. So I never really try to go crazy on speed when I'm taking off a tenon. And I'm also going to probably have to do a little bit of extra shaping here on this bottom. And we're going to do a little bit of a concave. So now that we've established all that, let's get that mask and face shield on. I'm going to pull off my coat so I don't have any loose sleeves. A little chilly out today, believe it or not. But always get the face mask on. My Windsor plywood cap off. And I'm going to use a spindle gouge, more likely than not, to pull most of this off here. So let's give it a shot. This is another crown tool that's produced by Hurricane here. It's a 3/4 inch spindle gouge. I've got a swept back grind on it. It's got a nice fresh edge. And I just anchor and ride that little bevel all the way in. Mostly open. And about if the top of it was pointing at something, it'd be pointing at about 132 o'clock on the top face. Once I feel comfortable that I've got a nice establishment here, I can come in at an angle. Nice little shavings off of there. Slowly come into the middle. A little touch there. Probably a little heavier cut than I need, and the tool rests a little high as I'm getting closer in there. All double rubbing cuts. You want to be careful not to burnish the bottom. Keep a nice angle on your tool so that the cuts you're taking are all easy. I'm going to go in a little bit of concave on the bottom so it'll always sit flat. It's a terrible place to start brushing because you're near the end. I'll just peel a little of the extra material away here, riding the bevel. Sometimes I'll let the bevel cut right in, touch right into the actual smooth spot on my live center there. We have a nice smooth bottom so far. Now I'm going to take it in. I pulled out my edge just a little bit. I'm going to roll in gently. We've got a little dent there overnight. So we're going to roll in gently, a little bit of concave bottom, then we'll remove that foot. I'm going to switch to a smaller bowl gouge. Going back to my crown, 1/2 inch. before I take that nub all the way off, I'm going to go ahead and move my banjo out of the way. And I'm going to sand this flat. We have a nice smooth surface, and I'm going to put a texture in the bottom and a little ring line. It's kind of my signature. And then in the middle, when we're done, I'll sand it and sign the inside before we do the final buffing. Take a look at our base. We still have some sanding lines in there. It's okay, because we're going to come in here now with some texture tools. So there are as many ways to do this as there are turners, I believe. I personally have been enjoying Ron Brown's Best texturing tool, and I've really found it to be easy to get used to. It's got a nice weight to it. Just a little spiral wheel on the end. So I'm going to turn it back up right where we were at. Just under 500 RPM. I'm going to get a little bit going here. I'm going to draw it out to myself. I just kind of listen to what it's doing, and I got a nice spiral pattern there. Just pulling it in and out. Now I'm going to take a detail point tool, and I'm going to highlight those two lines to give it some separation before we do another sanding and an application of wax. So this is my little shop-made point tool, and I use that for putting sharp little lines on stuff. Same speed, just right around 500 RPM. Find that outside area, lightly apply it. Come to the inside, lightly apply. Now we should have a nice defined line on the bottom there. So see how that adds some real interesting character once we sand that nub away and sign our name in there. And it shows that, you paid a little extra attention. A lot of people, when they pick up a piece, they're going to touch the sides and how smooth it is, but they're always going to flip it over to look for your signature. And adding a little extra detail kind of shows your clients that you actually care. So now I'm just going to barely sand the top surfaces here with some 400. And that's just a little extra shine on there, really, for me, just a little smooth surface. Get out those last 320 sanding lines we had. Now when we take a look at that, so we still have our towel from yesterday when we applied the grit to the outside and the inside of the bowl. So this is going to take very little, and I generally will only apply the bottom part while it's spinning. This way I get it in all the little grooves. It'll splash around if you're not careful. I start in the middle, a little bit of pressure applied towards the headstock, and pull out. Now I got all the sawdust out that way. I'm going to come in on the edge here to keep that material off from our area. We've already shined it. And I'm going to move in from the outside in, applying firm pressure, not sliding, just going down on it. Because that's going to chew up the cloth because we have that nice texture there now. So these are just shop towels. Keep calling them cloth, but they're just shop towels. Okay. And that is how I finish the bottom of my bowls. At least that's how we finish the bottom of this bowl. So now I'm going to go over to my workbench, remove that tenon with a chisel first, sand off the little nub that's left, and then take it over and sign it with my heat pen, and then I'll meet you over at the buffing wheel. Okay, we're ready to buff it out now. We've got our bowl. Got it signed on the bottom there. I do my last name, the year, and this is the number 2, their second item I've done for a YouTube video. So I'm trying to keep the stuff I did for YouTube separate from the items that I normally do for just normal production. So we're gonna go ahead and buff it with white diamond first, and then with the carnauba on the outside only, trying to be very mindful of these top edges. So let's give it a shot here. I'm going to wipe that down with a nice microfiber cloth first, and then we'll move to the carnauba. Okay, after wiping it off real good, it's time for the carnauba. Doesn't take a lot. That little stick's lasted me years. I think she's ready for some photographs and closing remarks. And there she is, the final project. Thanks for sticking in with me through the whole video. If you made it this far, I'd sure appreciate a like and a subscribe. Leave me a comment, let me know how I can improve. And if you could share it with a friend, it'd sure help me out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.